Hey everyone, and welcome to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and this is going to be our top 5 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation Season 2. At the end of each season, we did this for Seasons 1, 2, and 3 of the original series, did it for Season 1, of course, of Next Gen, and this is going to be Season 2. We do our top 5 best episodes, and our bottom 3 worst episodes. I think for Season 1 of this, we did top 5 worst as well.
There was just too many to choose from.
There was. This season's a lot. I mean, we'll talk about it. We'll sort of wrap up and give overall thoughts on the season at the end of this. But there's a very different curve to this one, which we'll get into when we get there. But we'll start off with the top 5. We sort of do the top 5 first. We'll give you the worst 3 as a sort of bonus afterwards. So starting off with number 5. So we sat down before this recording and we kind of agreed on what we thought. Number 5 is one that you were mainly championing, so I will let you mainly take the reins with this one. But number 5 is Elementary Dear Data.
Yeah, so this is, well, as the name might suggest, the Sherlock Holmes inspired episode. So obviously it's a follow up to some of that stuff that we had in season 1 with Data. But this goes a little bit further. It really dives into all of that stuff, and we have in the holodeck create a Moriarty that is designed to to challenge Data. That was the specification, and it becomes self-aware, and it becomes really interesting because obviously it starts off villainous and such, but by the end it's just another being that is trapped in the holodeck but is somewhat alive, depending on how you view that. I thought it was a really interesting episode, and it was nice to have near the start of the season.
Yeah, it's one I think that if you're a Data fan, you get a lot out of, because it's Data, and it's the idea of creating a faux worldly for Data. So the computer, the holodeck created a Moriarty that's self-aware, because that's the only way Data would have a challenge. Yeah. There's some interesting stuff there. And that was episode 3 for the season, by the way. Our number 4 is maybe a slightly different pick.
Bit of a wild card choice.
Yeah, we like to have at least one wild card in our top 5s for these seasons, and that is episode 19 of the season. That is Manhunt, which is an episode that I think we were both expecting to be trash. We were expecting this to be a bad episode, and ended up having not a good Star Trek story, but one of the more fun episodes in terms of the characters, because this is the episode where Troy's mother is back on board and is basically in heat and trying to seduce the captain every chance she gets, and Picard is trying to dodge her, and it makes for a really good comedy episode.
Yeah, it's surprisingly fun. Like I said, we thought this was going to be terrible, and then it was really, really funny consistently throughout, which is obviously, that was what it set out to be. It wasn't like funny by mistake. It was intentionally funny, and it definitely achieved its aim.
Oh yeah, it's worth mentioning that a lot of times in these early Star Trek seasons, or Next Gen at least, the funny stuff is not necessarily intentional, but this very much was. This was good humor, playing on who Picard is, playing on who some of the other characters are. It really worked, and yeah, I came out of this kind of like, that was a really fun 45 minutes of TV, which I was not expecting.
And it had some really funny callbacks to the episode with Troy's mother in the first season as well.
Yes, and we had the fireman back from Twin Peaks hitting his gong. And it had, even the opening with him, like, Riker insisting on taking the bag, and like basically, it's almost a little bit funnier because we know that Frakes in real life has back problems. so see him pretend to like really struggle with this bag was really funny. Yeah. Maybe an oddball pick, and maybe not one of the more special episodes, but I think season 2 has a lot of forgettable episodes. This one, I think, will stick with me a little bit because it was so entertaining.
It's funny because obviously we just looked through the list on IMDb now just to remind, okay, this is what all the episodes were. And this has one of the lower to middling ratings on there. And I think that's a bit unfair on it. Yeah.
Which leads us to our number 3, which is episode 8 of the season, and that is A Matter of Honor. This is the episode where Riker is on an exchange program with the Klingons, where he goes to be the number 1 on on the Klingon ship. And it really tests kind of like where his loyalties lie, and him kind of trying to understand how the Klingons, earn respect from each other. And then, of course, the inevitable possibility that the ship he's on comes into conflict with the Enterprise, and how he handles that, how Picard handles that on the Enterprise. and everything in between, and then obviously going to war for advice before he goes over. All these little things, but once he gets over there, the actual drama of him dealing with these Klingons and earning their respect. Teaches about Riker, but also teaches about the Klingons. We get like good, valuable information out of both sides of it, which is really good.
Yeah, we do, and there's some funny beats over there as well with like the Klingon food, for example, and just seeing the Klingons socialize and Riker trying to integrate with them. It was really interesting.
Yeah. Plus, it was a nice episode for set design and stuff because they got to like design a Klingon ship, and
it was really grungy and it's kind of fun.
So it felt one of those episodes that was adding a lot to the mythology of Star Trek. There are some episodes it's like, okay, so this is the episode where I don't know, they encounter yet another vortex and something happens, blah blah blah. It may be fun, but this one it feels like no, this is actually adding to what we think of as Klingons and how they operate, sort of on their own. No, not just the villains that because now the Romulans are there for that, and another group that we'll get to later on this list. So Matter of Honor was kind of like the first episode of the season. I think we'd liked a couple before this, but this was kind of like okay. I think we're actually starting to hit the good Next Generation episodes.
Because obviously we had Elementary Data near the start, but that wasn't like this is one of the great episodes of all time. This was just I had a lot of fun with this. But this was like, oh no, this is good storytelling and good world building in a different way.
Yeah, so Matter of Honor, very, very good. Which takes us on to our number 2 of the season. And number 2 is episode 16. And it was really a tough picking between 1 and 2, to be honest, because the top 2 were obvious. We had no doubt in our minds what numbers 1 and 2 were. It was just a case of which order they go in. Number 2 is episode 16, Q Who. And this is a huge episode, and I think if there's one thing I'm hoping for going into season 3, because we've had we had a couple of fun picks here in this top 5, and I think number 3 is really good, but it's numbers 1 and 2 that are this next level stuff.
Special.
I really hope that when we get to this at the end of season 3, that season 3 has 5 special. It's like all 5 of them are upper tier, insane quality Star Trek.
Honestly, I think we might be asking for a bit much there. If we can get 3 or 4, like at least if we get more than what we got this season, I'll be happy.
Yeah, but Q Who is the episode that introduces the Borg, also brings Q back, obviously, as the title implies, and everything about the introduction to the Borg was as perfect as I could have envisioned it. Like, I know about the Borg, I seen First Contact a long time ago, so I have vague memories of, what they look like and whatever, but this introduction to them, the way that they discover that the Borg have this hive mind, and the way they don't really care, they have no personality, like the way that they kill one of the collective members, and then it just beams another one aboard who just goes and just continues doing its thing. It's like this never-ending stream of soldiers. Seeing the set design of the Borg ship, the design of the Borg themselves, all these ideas, it was all wonderful.
Yeah, we mentioned set design in the previous episode with the Klingon ship being like really grungy and dirty and kind of interesting. And this is the complete opposite. It's so sterile, and it's all sharp corners and edges, and really efficient. There's no rounded, aesthetically pleasing things.
It's still grungy, but it's grungy in a cyberpunk way, and it's one of my favorite types of design, I think. And not only seeing all this stuff for the first time, but building them as a threat in two ways. The idea that they have to run, they can't fight this, but also the idea that Q, in his own warped way, he's actually trying to prepare Picard.
It's like, hey, you guys should probably be aware of this.
He's trying to prepare Picard into actually being able to maybe even have a chance of withstanding the Borg, when the time comes. That now that they're venturing off into these sections of space, so it adds a lot to the mythology. I mean, introduces a whole new thing. It's one thing to add more to the Klingons. This is introducing a whole new race essentially to Star Trek. That we just know because of the future's sake that they're going to be a big deal. They're going to be this. But even in the episode, if I had never heard it, if I watched this as it aired, they feel like a big deal. They feel like a big deal immediately.
They presented it with gravitas in a way that some of the episodes just don't.
Yeah, that was one of the things we said, actually, is that even from the opening minutes of this episode, it felt like an important episode in a way that a lot of the sillier episodes just feel like they're silly from the start, or they feel like they're just, ho-hum, whatever, it's another Star Trek episode. This one from the start feels like the tone and the atmosphere around everything feels like special.
Yeah, I think it's some particularly strong direction. Because obviously, TV at this time doesn't have very standout direction for the most part. I mean, Twin Peaks isn't far off, but generally speaking, it's standard by the numbers TV direction. And this isn't massively outside of those boundaries, but I think it is in the tone. Just a couple of shots here or there that give it a little bit different weight. That you do feel it as you're watching it.
Yeah. So now Q-Who is a wonderful, wonderful episode that is not only extremely fascinating on its own, but it's incredibly exciting for where things are going to go in the future, and even plays into Picard, the new show, which I'm currently reviewing with Tara. So a lot of legacy sort of stemming from this one, and it's not one of those things where I wouldn't have been surprised if the first appearance isn't that special. They become special over time. The big episodes that come later are the ones that really sell us. I mean, it's almost like a TV show in itself, right? The first episodes aren't that exciting. A Star Trek, Next Gen.
Yeah. Often they don't know that this is going to be a big thing they'll reuse. They'll just like, hey, this will be a cool idea. And, and then later they pick up on it again and go, all right, let's build on that. And then it becomes the thing you think of.
But there's confidence in this one. There's confidence, and it felt like they knew they had something special, and it feels that way when you're watching this. So that is great. And there's only one other option, of course. That was almost number one, but there was only one other option to be number one, and that is episode 9, The Measure of a Man, which, interestingly, is also playing into Picard, the new show. The scientist in this, Maddox, he gets mentioned like episode 1, and he's never shown up again in Star Trek since this episode. He's been mentioned, I think. I think it's mentioned occasionally that Data still is in touch with him. With his research, but he's never. But he's mentioned in Picard episode 1. I was like, wait a minute, I know that name, and it was like, oh, he's from A Measure of a Man. Oh, I know what I'm talking about. Excellent.
As you do.
So this is basically a trial episode. I guess a courtroom. It's not really. It's not a courtroom itself. It's just a Star Trek set, but it's debating whether or not Data has rights. Is he a property of Starfleet, or is he life and therefore should have the rights of any other life form as far as the Federation sees it? So, and it's Picard defending Data and trying to sort of argue that he is a life form and he should have his own choice. And it's wonderful, in a way that's different from Q-Who. And I think what's great about these two episodes together in season 2 is that they kind of represent the two big things I want from Star Trek. They represent the cool mythology stuff and the exciting villains and all that kind of like deep space, the mystery of the the unknown space, right? That's a part of Star Trek.
The exploration.
And then this side of it from this episode is the moral debates, the rights and the wrongs, and how do we solve problems. Like this is kind of the other big thing about Star Trek that makes Star Trek.
What I like with this episode is that it doesn't just give you the answers. Obviously, while Picard wins the argument, it's Riker that is the one that is being made to prosecute and provide evidence against, and he provides compelling evidence in his own right. He tries because he has to, and it's really great seeing that conflict for him having to do that against his friend, against his own beliefs.
Yeah, because he's basically told that. I mean, I don't think they'll fire him if he doesn't give it his all. But it's just that's basically what it is. It's like, no, you're been ordered to prosecute.
It's basically like, hey, if you don't do a proper job of this, then Picard's defense is meaningless, and therefore we might just rule the trial inadmissible and Data's property because there wasn't a real argument. Yeah.
So the trial, which takes up like half of the episode, is really, really good. The build-up is good as well, and and somehow they actually managed to use Tasha's death from season 1 in a dramatic beat that really worked.
Shockingly,
him having that little hologram of Tasha, and them having to ask about it and sort of get to the crux of why he has that. It was shockingly good, and it took it took a joke moment from a really bad episode that we had been making fun of for a season and a half, and it took a horrible death and somehow made gold out of it. And there's no way that's not impressive, right? There's no way
that is damn fine writing to be able to do that.
So, and that makes me trust them more going forward. Even when because we're going to have, as much as I'm expecting a lot more great episodes, I'm still expecting stinkers. Mixed in with them.
It's network TV essentially. They're going to be there.
But if they're going to keep coming back and having great episodes every once in a while, you trust them to get there. You trust that they're going to keep coming.
And I think what I really like about this episode as well, compared to say like the one with the Borg, is that the budget is so much tighter on this episode. Half of it is in a single room.
Yeah, and all the other rooms are all just rooms we're always in. So it's not like
exactly. So it is really. The budget is tiny comparatively. There's no fancy new sets that they've really gone all out to design or anything like that. it's just fantastic writing.
Yeah. I don't know. It's funny to me actually because we see when I guess depending on where the studios are that they're shooting, they may have to pay for rental anyway all the time. But let's assume that they own their own studio, which a lot of times they do.
Yeah.
Like at which point does an episode like this where it's shot in sets that are the ones you already have anyway is like say the electricity budget for the day more than what you spent on sets? like
Probably.
You know, and obviously, I assume if you have to build one set for an episode, the set budget's more because obviously that's just going to cost a lot. But
yeah, but if you've got if you're just on the Enterprise for an episode.
And a lot of episodes are, to be fair, you know, a lot of episodes are just on there. I suppose the one thing they have to do, I do wonder how many sets they have to build, where they just build the background for when, because it's the only thing we ever see in it. Some episodes that aren't on the Enterprise is when they're talking to someone on the screen. So I wonder how many sets they've built that are just that little back bit for the background of the person talking.
Quite a few, I imagine.
Yeah,
and even ones like this with this, you know, the courtroom. It's okay. It's just the same room as something else. They've just repurposed it.
Oh, sure, no doubt.
Just slightly redressed it, and you know, it really just makes it easier.
No doubt. So that's a top 5. That's a top 5 episodes for Star Trek: The Next Generation Season 2. But of course, there were bad episodes as well. We don't want to be too negative here, but we are going to point out 3 stinkers. 3 stinkers. The first of which, number 3 on this list, is episode 12 of the season. That is called The Royale, and it's not the worst episode ever, but I think this is one where it was really between this and then one of the more recent episodes we did with the emissary with the Klingon woman, and both this episode and that episode fall into the same sort of category of these sounded like they had potential, or actually, well, it's slightly different. The Klingon one, it sounded like it had potential and then just played into the love story stuff, so it was really dull instead. This one, arguably, is even more frustrating because the potential didn't come from, you know, reading the description in advance. The potential came from the opening 5-10 minutes. The first 5-10 minutes of this episode set up some really interesting stuff and had some really unique visuals and like an atmosphere.
That first 5 minutes of this is like amongst the best stuff of this season.
Because there's that scene where they're going down to this like weird planet where they're trying to figure out the mystery, and it's like a void with like a revolving door in it, and it felt like so surreal and different. It almost felt like David Lynch had directed a scene from in this show, and then they go into this, you know, this casino hotel, and from there it's just this
bland.
Yeah, there's nothing interesting going on. The mystery isn't really a mystery. It becomes data, you know, and data gambling could have been a fun episode potentially. If, you know, an episode of data in a casino. Like, there's no reason why that couldn't have been a blast, but it wasn't really what we were looking for this episode.
It never delivered on that first 5 minutes, and then beyond that, even once we're doing this, it's this old kind of pulpy book, and it's just that on a loop. It never really played into the pulp angle. It just played it really straight. It never, you know, did anything satirical with it or unique. It just really played it by the numbers and was kind of boring.
Yeah. So that is our number 3. Our number 2 is actually episode 1 of the season. We started off on the wrong foot, for sure. So that was The Child. That is Troy gets impregnated by a mysterious alien light.
Yep, and gives birth like the next day.
This sounded like it was going to be terrible, and it may not have been as disastrous as I had in my head, but it was still really, really bad.
It's pretty bad.
Like, you know, Riker's reactions to some of this pregnancy stuff were pretty funny. I don't know if that was intentional humor though, if it was more just I was just enjoying Riker.
The awkwardness.
Yeah, being awkward about it. Yeah. So it's a rough one because Troy episodes unfortunately usually suffer because her as a character, well, I think she has potential here or there. She often has some of the worst plots because they give her these weird romances, these weird things where her mother's trying to set her up, or she meets some ambassador, or in this case, she gets impregnated. Like, it's always these weird. Like, I don't want to say, because obviously Star Trek is a very sort of forward-thinking show, but I do want to say that the plots in the show so far for the female characters have mostly been garbage, and. I don't want to say necessarily sexist in and of themselves, but definitely sexist in the sense that they always seem to fall into the same category of like, oh, she's either impregnated or she's in love or she like it's always something like that.
I will give the benefit that Pulaski's stuff never fell into that this season.
That's okay. That's fair, but I think that's because she was never a regular cast. She never really got an episode to herself in the
She
same
got
way.
the one where she was infected.
Oh, okay. No, she had one. You're right. But that's okay.
Well, it's not a particularly amazing plot. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't a great episode. It didn't fall into any of these traps.
Is that just because she's older and Gene Roddenberry, being the pervert he is, thought, no, she's too old for a sexy plot, so she gets the old age makeup plot. Yeah. But, you know, Tasha's back. I mean, if you remember, she had to run from rape gangs, if you remember her backstory.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Crusher, you know, tending to be this awkward kind of love interest for Picard. And obviously, I'm kind of looking forward to her being back, actually, for...
She didn't have a lot of episodes on her own, though. Her episodes. Yeah. She was just kind of there, a hero now. But
she's here for the next 5 seasons, so, I mean, she's probably going to get a few.
She'll get some, I'm sure, and we'll judge those accordingly as they happen.
But Troy's episode, even though we liked Manhunt, which arguably is kind of a Troy episode, but it's more of her mother than it is her, to be honest.
Yeah, she's there, but it's more her mother and Picard.
Yes. I'm just remembering that scene there where she's saying how much more intensely, like, corny, like, she is next to Riker. And he's like, oh, she can be, you know, when we started dating, Troy told me 4 times as, you know, erotic. She's like, yeah, if not more. Like, more?
Yeah. Or when a mother is like going after anyone because Picard spurned her and she's after, you know, Riker on the bridge. Yeah. Troy's like, don't you dare, mother.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was fun stuff. And I think what made that work is because it was almost not a parody, but it was almost playing off how bad some of the other Troy episodes were. It was kind of taking them and just building some actual intended comedy around them. And this is the kind of, even though this wasn't the one with the mother, this is kind of the bad Troy episode that I dread when I think of a Troy episode coming up. When I read that description in IMDb and the next one's a Troy episode, I'm like, oh god, this is what I'm worried of.
Honestly, this might sound harsh. I think she's one of the worst actors on the show.
She is one of the worst actors on the show, and I think she's better in this because when we saw her in Titan season 1, she was dreadful in that. So she is pulling her weight better here than I've seen her doing other things. But compared to the others, I mean, you know, when she's in a room with Patrick Stewart, there's definitely a difference.
Yeah, I think the problem is she still comes off as worse than most of the rest of the cast, and therefore, when she's meant to be the one carrying the episode, I'm just not sure she's capable. In the same way that, you know, a lot of the other cast are.
That's fair. But still better than Wesley, though.
No, sure. Oh, she's better than a kid. Sure.
Hey, some kids are good actors, right? That's some kids are great. It's fine.
Yeah, sure.
But no, that may be part of the problem as well. But the child is number 2 on this list. And fair enough, it started on the wrong foot. It definitely ended on the wrong foot because naturally our number 1 worst episode of the season is Shades of Grey, the season finale, and that is because it's a clip show. Of course,
it's 10 minutes of an episode.
And it's perfectly middling for the first 10 minutes. It's just whatever, and then the clips start, and it's just a complete waste of time for the rest of it. And I don't know how bad an episode would have to be for me to rank something worse than the clip show episode. I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure, like, if we'd gotten some, you know, like Code of Honor from season 1, like, would I rank that worse than this?
Possibly.
Well, that might get there, but clip shows inherently are terrible, and they're terrible because they're just using old clips to fill up time because they need to fill up an episode that they don't have budget for. Or in this case, there's a writer's strike and they have to just churn something out quickly and be on their way.
Yeah, it's annoying. I think it is possible to be worse because you could offend me for the first time with something really bad. Whereas in a clip show, I'm just bored.
Yeah, it's just painfully boring. And there's really not much else to say about it than that. That's it. Because, hell, we sure had to talk about it for more than 10 minutes when we did the review of this episode.
We haven't got much more than that in us now.
So that's pretty much it. So I will say, season 2, I think the standard overall was up from season 1. Obviously, the 2 special, like, you know, even arguably our top 3, I think, were all head and shoulders above the first season. So that's great. I do think there's a lot of episodes as much because there was a few more in consideration for that bottom 3, but not a lot. I think there's a lot of 6s and 7s in season 2. There's a lot of episodes where even if like the internet seems to dislike it, because even like something like pen pals, which people don't tend to like, I still thought there was good things in pen pals that I like. Even
it's not the worst. It was fine.
Yeah, there was problems in it, but there was some good stuff as well with Data having this friendship, and there was some interesting moral quandaries brought up. There's a debate in that episode where they're talking about whether or not they leave this planet to die, because it's against the Prime Directive, and I'm like, hey, like, this is a good debate. This is actually a really good, interesting conversation between the characters, because they're conflicted about it. They're conflicted about the Prime Directive, and is it the right thing to do? So...
Yeah, I think that's the problem with this season is, like I say, we had a top 3 that were really easy to get, and then the other 2 were just like, well, these are kind of fun. The bottom 3, I mean, we really had a bottom 2, and then we were like, all right, well, which one were we most disappointed in?
Yeah, that was basically it.
The rest of them, because we were going through, we're just like, yeah, I mean, it was okay, it's fine, doesn't really belong on either list. It's not. Yeah, we'd never go, oh, this was a really good episode, but it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. I mean, some are more than that, though, to be fair. Like, I don't think, like, cause what you're saying is very in the middle, where I think there's a lot of them that are just a bit above that, where they have a good enough ideas, they're just not executed to the point where I'm enthusiastic about them. And I think, going forward, obviously, I hope it veers more into enthusiasm, but the season as a whole has a lot of episodes that have good things in it that just don't necessarily live up as a whole, or they focus on the wrong thing. There's a couple episodes that were like that. Yeah.
There was quite a few more frustrating episodes in this season, I think, in that you can see that they're like 60% there, and you're like, oh, you know exactly what you need to do to make this into a really good, solid episode, and it just never quite gets there. And that's more annoying than just ones that are really bland.
Yeah, but I do think it's a step up from season. And not just because there's a few standout episodes, right? I think just in general the quality averages up from season 1.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we couldn't have done 5 terrible episodes from this season.
No, not terrible. I mean, there's a couple that were in content. We're talking about the one where Wesley was with the princess girl.
Sure, yeah. There's more that are not good, but they're not as bad as some of the ones that we've had before by a long shot.
So, hey, that is our best and worst of Star Trek The Next Generation Season 2, which means next episode we begin our voyage into Season 3 and get to some hopeful gold. Although the first one didn't sound too hot from the description last week, but we'll see. But looking forward to getting to some of the meat. I think Raul D. Moore, for example, who was the showrunner on Battlestar Galactica, he's a writer on Next Gen. I don't know which season he joined, but I think we're getting into that range where he's like one of the people on the writing team. So, and it's not so much that I expect like even just ones with his name on it. I just the sense that some good writers are going to be kind of cropping into the mix.
That's always nice.
In the coming seasons. So, yeah. So let us know what you think. What your favorite episodes of season 2 of Next Gen are. What do you think of our picks in the comments below? Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. Rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Helps out a lot if you do that. More people will find us. You can support us, of course, by going to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and doing so for as little as $1 per month. You can get extra content from some of our shows. $5 per month gets you early access to a bunch of things, including these Star Trek discussions, and of course voting rates on some of the movie shows and things like that. So go and have a look. Otherwise, check out the weekly Picard reviews that me and Tara are doing for the new show, and check out some of the other shows we have. So that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek, guys, and remember, when it comes to the ladies, Wesley Crusher is in complete control.